In this video, I have Ken, immigration attorney, who was on my channel last week answering questions, and tonight he is back on the channel again answering some of your questions that you left down in the comments. Stick around. Okay, welcome back, Ken. Thank you so much. So this time you're here to answer some questions that people left down in the comments, and I also encourage, if anybody's watching this, to please go ahead and if you have a question, leave the questions down in the comments as well. So thank you, Ken.
You're welcome, and it's good to be here, and it's good to share what I can with the folks that watch your channel and that trust you.
I appreciate it, and hopefully you had a good Christmas.
We did. We spent it on top of a mountain next to a canyon, and right now outside is 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Ooh. So it's chilly. Nice and warm in the camper, though.
Very good. Well, let's go with some of the questions that people had. The first one that we kind of observed in the comments was, how did you know that your Filipina would be a good woman and would not change after coming to the U.S.? That was one of the questions.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I see a lot of comments and a lot of cynicism about doing that. And then, you know, when they found out that I spent only 12 days in the Philippines and I just met her online, you know, basically they're saying you can't know somebody that way. Well, there's a yes and a no to that answer. Sure, you are not there with them. They could present themselves as being somebody different. In fact, all the scammers do that. They present themselves being one way, and in reality, they get off the camera and then go hug their husband and spend time with their kids. The thing is, there are what the scammers and what the bad women count on is your own superficiality, your own selfishness, and your own emotions. And that is the problem that a lot of folks have in meeting a woman, is they allow their emotions to dominate. You know, the right side of our brain is for the seat of emotions, and the left side of our brain is the seat of logic. And when we make decisions, they're supposed to blend together to help us make correct decisions. Well, the problem is when someone is charming, that charm is usually, not always, that charm is usually manipulative. And it comes from two sources. One of those sources can be just the natural mask that we wear. We want to present our good side or even our false side, our mask. So, and because we don't trust them with who we really are deep down yet. The other source it can come from, of course, is the scammer. Now, how did I know that my wife was a good woman? Well, first of all, we spent a lot of time talking. And one of the things that I do, now my experience as a lawyer, my education in counseling, my whole background in law enforcement is good at picking up, you know, falsehoods. But even without that, the idea is that I had to discover who she was through subtleties. I had to make certain that my emotions, my right brain didn't lie to my left brain, and my emotions dominate my decision making. And so as we got acquainted, she wasn't that charming to start with. She had a certain level of charm, but I had been experiencing so many charming women on the on video that I ended up, you know, I came to realize. Now, where my realization came from had to start with the beginning. I have like 93 ex-wives. You know, when you have the history, you might as well exaggerate it, make fun of it, right?
Right.
Because we get as much fun out of making fun of ourselves as we do from watching other sources of comedy. But in looking back in my own life, I recognized I was choosing the wrong woman time after time. And the reason I discovered I did a lot of introspection. I just sat down and discussed and thought about who I was, what my character is like, how people I'm attracted to people. And I discovered in my own self-interest, my own view of seeing myself, that number one, I was all about my own feelings.
Hmm.
And I had forgotten the rule that if you want to have a friend, you have to be a friend. That means you have to project and care more about the other person than you do your own interests. So that was one place I started. Then I realized that um, then I realized that I always chose people who were charming to me in my face. And I discovered that after marrying them, after a little while, that charm went away and the selfishness set up. And so I discovered, I remembered my education. Narcissistic personality disorder is all about charm and manipulating people for themselves.
Hmm.
And basically, that's what I fell for. So, in coming to realize that, I then, when I got on the phone, and I'm sorry if I'm taking too long explaining this,
Oh, you're fine.
but I came to realize that when I wanted to find somebody now for my future and the rest of my life, I had to get down below the surface. I had to weed out the charm. I had to get below the surface. They can be charming, but I began to realize I had to find below to see if that was genuine or if it was manipulative. And so the more I got acquainted with, I was watching for subtleties. And then what I also knew that I had to do is break down that superficial wall and get to the heart of who we are and who she is. And as we talked, instead of talking about superficial details in the interview and asking questions and getting answers and her asking questions and getting answers, I realized that we were past the wall of superficially when we started to really share our regrets in life jointly,
Hmm.
our pain that we have felt, the struggles that we have had, not necessarily financially, because she never once shared with me the financial struggles that she had. And that was a key factor, um, because they all know that that's a way to manipulate guys.
Sure.
And that's what the scammers do. So she was very careful not to go there. But we talked about the pain, the loss of some close family members, the struggles that she was having. She was working full time and going to school nights as a working student.
Hmm.
And her father had died young. Her mother died when she was 16, and her family was somewhat helped, but she had to find a place to board. She had to work. She found a job in a pharmacy. She had to work her way through college, and with just a little bit of help from family. And so the struggle that she went through to do that and maintain good grades was something that she shared. And of course, I shared the same experience of how I had to work my way through college, except that one of the things that we have here is student loans. So I
Right.
spent time in the military, and we discussed that. We discussed her working in the pharmacy. She was sharing gut level honesty about her own failings, about her
Hmm.
own experiences, but also her joys and hopes, talking about the conversations she had with friends, showing pictures of them, showing pictures of her home, even though she was embarrassed by the low
Sure.
standards. She, we shared things on a much deeper level. And the character of a good woman is found in beyond that superficiality. So when I went there, I was able to see and meet with all of her friends and
Hmm.
her family, and the superficiality was totally set aside and it became clear. So in my case, even though I spent 12 days there, she
Hmm.
had also, when she went to get her and after I was there, she had gone to get her medical tests and she had tuberculosis. So she had to spend time in Manila. And there's thousands of women that go have to go to be treated for tuberculosis. And one of the things that people need to realize is that when they go to St. Luke's in Manila to be tested for tuberculosis or be tested, and if they're found to be have TB, um, if they go back to their own city or province and be treated there, they can't come to the United States for about a year and a half. It takes a year and a half treatment. However, if they stay there in Manila and go there every day to get their injections, then
Mhm.
it's only 6 months.
Okay.
And so that process there, continued sharing, really helped us to get to know each other. But then when she came here, the difference is when they come here, how do you keep them from becoming westernized?
Mhm.
That is the key is very, very similar. First of all, there is an age factor. The younger they are, the more westernized they're going to become when they get here.
True.
That is a that is where that is one of the key factors.
Yeah.
So if you get somebody that's 18 years old, they're definitely the vast majority of them are going to become westernized. You
Mhm.
get up to, okay, I'm not going to say that age 22, 23, because I think gang is 22, 23. So I'm gonna just skip that for a second. And when it comes up to about 25, then you have more of them that will resist
Sure.
being westernized. There is a change in the maturity level when you get up to around 25, 26. Now for Filipinos, that it is different because so many of
Mhm.
them are raised with a sense of responsibility from childhood on,
Right.
that there's differences there.
Sure.
But the older they become and the more settled in as an adult in the Philippines of living the values that are important to them, the more they will reject the values when they come to a Western country.
Mm. Very good point.
So in the United States or in other Western countries, age is a factor. You get them up into the 30s, they're not likely to become westernized unless, and here's the exception. Everything I say, I tell my clients, everything I say is true except when it's not.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So there are exceptions to everything in life. And when they come to the United States, and if it's going to be dependent upon what your values are as well. If you have chosen a woman that has the same values that you have, then and you are working on constantly building that relationship, focusing on the love that you have together and your family first,
Mhm.
then the westernization is not likely going to happen because Filipino women generally resist the Western influences, and they generally resist becoming westernized and becoming selfish. Now, if you live your life in a selfish way, and if you live your life without certain values, then they're going to adopt the values that you have as well. I'm sorry if I took a long time answering that
No,
question, but
no.
it's such an important one, and I see so much cynicism. And remember, now, if in your situation you find uh, that you don't want to bring someone, and you are cynical, and you do not trust that any Filipino will come,
Mhm.
please don't ruin it for others, because not everyone shares the same value set that you have. So if people just keep on coming that Filipino women are selfish, they're all scammers, they're going to come to the United States, they're going to become westernized, they're going to become selfish. If that's the way you are, that's the way they're going to become. But please do not try to ruin it and discourage other Western men
Sure.
from finding a different lifestyle and finding a woman who is a good woman with good character and wanting to bring them, because the rule is generally Filipino women make the most wonderful women. They are the most unselfish, and um, and when they come to the United States, they are the most loyal,
Yeah.
depending upon age. And I'll tell you, my wife is incredible. The loyalty when she develops friendships, She develops friendships and finds out when they're with other Filipinas.
Sure.
And when she finds some that are in there, she comes home and shares how selfish they are, how she doesn't like them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
she chooses friends that have her sets of value, even among Filipinos here in our area.
Good answer. Now, the other one that kept coming up is a lot of people said, "What if I don't want her to come over on a fiance visa? What if I want to get to know her? And can she come over on a tourist visa? How hard is it? Or a student visa, perhaps?"
Well, that's a very interesting question about bringing somebody here on something other than a fiance visa to get acquainted with them here. A lot of folks would want to do that. There is a possibility of bringing a woman from the Philippines, but you have to. There is a rule. In fact,
Mhm.
it's one of the regulations of USCIS and the State Department. The United States government presumes that everyone coming from another country is coming in order to commit immigration fraud. Okay, so
Okay.
when it comes to applications, whether it's a fiance visa or an I-130 petition for relative or a visa for a tourist visa or student visa, it's presumed that they're all coming to commit immigration law. So what does that mean? It means that in the United States, in criminal cases, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Hmm.
So in the United States, it's a basic fundamental law that the presumption is in favor of the other person. Well, in immigration, the law is the burden of proof is switched. So instead of them proving that you're going to commit immigration fraud, starting out, you just fill out the form, and you're going to get denied because the presumption is that you're committing immigration law. So the burden of proof switches to the immigrant or the traveler to prove that you're not committing immigration fraud. Now, when
Okay.
you go to look to see what the rules are and how to how to accomplish this, there are two different departments of government that you have to look for the answers. They're separate departments. So there is the United States State Department
Hmm.
that is a complete department that have all of their rules and have all of their procedures and all their forms. And then there is a Department of Homeland Security, which houses then the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, which we call USCIS. So looking here, first of all, there's USCIS, and this is you just go to uscis.gov, and then you can go through and look at visiting the United States. And then it also refers you to the state website. So if you want to visit on student visas, then you would be here in USCIS. If you want to come now, the State Department also has sections um, on coming here as a student visa. So you notice there's two separate departments, and both of them have instructions and descriptions of various visas. And you need to understand, read and understand, and search both websites for both departments, the
Yeah.
USCIS and the State Department. Now, coming here, now down here on US visas, you can come here for tourism and visit. And when you come down here, then there's going to be a section, a visitor B. So B2 is a tourist visa. And there's an overview. If I click on the overview and then drop down this for tourism, it shows the purposes for which you can come.
Okay.
So when you go for the interview, if the purpose does not match the visa that you applied for, it will be declined. And they may not even tell you why.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
And I know that happens. So visit with friends or relatives, medical treatment, tourism, vacation. But these are not immigration, um, not for purposes of immigration. These are non-immigration visas. And then there's travel purposes not permitted on visitor visas. One is for study, employment, paid performances, work as foreign press, permanent residence in the United States. And that's the key right there. So if they were to come across on a on tourist visa, okay, and they're coming to see their boyfriend, and then you get acquainted, you fall in love,
Hmm.
you cannot expect to get approved for a green card. You can't do that. This is a non-immigrant visa, and it will be denied.
Okay.
Now, is it possible, with the help of a lawyer, to make the case that she didn't come here for the purpose of getting married and get approved? It's difficult, and a good lawyer may be able to make the case, but that's going to be more expensive, and it's just
Sure.
cheaper and better in the long run for her to go back, not overstay her visa, but go back and then petition from there. So having her come across, if your purpose is to have her come across, get acquainted, and then get married and stay here, like a lot of people from the South come to the United States
Hmm.
illegally, they can't get visas. Now, um, I have gotten approvals for people that have come here illegally,
Hmm.
and and then get married. I have gotten green cards for them, but you have to prove that in doing so, even though illegally, you have to prove that that you did it, that your marriage is a valid marriage, but you have to prove that there's an extreme hardship if you were to get deported, and that is a very difficult bar to attain. So the chances of getting deported are going to be very high. And if you come here and you um, overstay by less than 6 months, it is possible then to be able to get um, a reprieve for that, but
Okay.
she still has to go back. If she overstays by 6 months, then she is barred from any other application for a period of 3 years. If she overstays by more than 6 months and up to 1 year, then she is barred for 10 years. Now it's barred for 10 years. Is that an absolute bar? Yes, except that when it's not. Everything I say is true except when it's not. Sometimes it can be waived, but it's going to be more expensive. It's going to cause more heartache, and it's going to be cheaper to
Hmm.
just ignore the B2. Now the student visa, very similar, almost the same thing, except the student visa, if she can get qualified. She has to get accepted by a school. She
Hmm.
gets, and then she qualifies, and she goes to the, she has to go to an interview at the consulate. And if they find that her purpose is basically to meet a boyfriend, her boyfriend here,
Hmm.
it'll likely get denied even though she is approved. Likely, not always. Sometimes they can come knowing that there's a boyfriend here. Once they are here and they're a student, is it possible to change the status and qualify and get married and qualify? Yes, but it becomes increasingly difficult. Now, just very recently, I did get, I was able to get approved. Now, I've never had one. Actually, I've never had one turned down. So,
Oh,
because if because attorneys know where the likelihood is, and so I had one that went to college near here and met a girl here while they were working. You can only work, a student from another country can only work with certain jobs that are approved through the school,
okay.
a work study program. And so they fell in love, and they got married, and I was able to get him uh, changed from the F2 student, F1 student, I mean, to green card, along LPR, lawful permanent resident. But it also depends upon what country they come from. If it's from one of the ESTA countries, do you know what ESTA country is?
No, I don't.
Okay. There are certain countries, there's a long list of them, mostly European, but there's Australia, there's a number of countries that are part of the visa waiver program and that can come into the United States without a visa. And so if you come in under the ESTA program and go to school, then you're in violation and you have to return. But if you come in on a F1 visa and you go to school, if you're from that ESTA country, a visa waiver program country, which Philippines is not, then it is easier to get this change. If it come from somebody from the Philippines or India or Korea, it still can happen. But the idea there is your intent was not to become a permanent resident. Remember, I showed you there is one of the purposes that's not allowed for. But if you can demonstrate that you came as a student for the purpose of being a student and for no other non-immigration immigration purpose,
Sure.
then it can get approved. But it's still cheaper and easier to do it through the other process. Now,
Okay.
one of the reasons that it makes sense is there are good men here who cannot travel.
Mm.
For those men who cannot travel, in other words, they literally cannot medically get on an airplane and travel anywhere, then that 2 year that requirement for a fiancé visa to visit is not enforced. It can be waived.
Okay.
So there's no reason to try to pull these stunts,
Sure.
um, things that are illegal, and take that risk and get them barred and you barred from being able to petition once again. Again, sorry if I went too long on this.
No, no. So it sounds like it's just much easier. If your intent is to get to know somebody, it's much better and easier just to fly over there and get to know them. And then if you're going to get married, bring them over on a fiance visa.
Yeah. In
Seems
fact, I would recommend, it was a benefit I found that going over, meeting her, and then coming back and then not seeing her for a while, it increases the depth of the relationship
right.
manyfold. By the time Jally did get here, which was well, it was about a year after
Hmm.
she was supposed to. The depth of our relationship really helped a lot of the transition when she got here because I understood her so much more. And it's difficult for any man to understand any woman,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
understanding the culture, learning to understand where her motivations are coming from, where her depth, her pain level is, where her genuine needs are different than Western women, and it's good to get
Sure.
to know them.
So another question was, and we briefly touched on this last time with the poverty level over 125%, but can someone on Social Security sponsor a Filipina? I'm assuming they can if the poverty level is at 125% and
So
above.
here I'm going to the USCIS site, which shows the poverty 125% of the poverty guidelines. So it depends upon the income required depends upon the number of people that are going to be in your household, including you and your mate. And so um, if a person makes $17,240, that's if you're in the military. If you're not in the military, if you earn $21,550 and
Hmm.
you're only going to have a household size of just you and your Filipina bride, then you can be a sponsor.
Okay.
Okay, so along with the petition for relative, you have to establish your sponsorship, which means that you are going to be responsible for her financially at the level of 125% of the poverty guidelines for 40 quarters. That's 10 years. But I think I mentioned last time that once she's here and she gets her EAD, which is the employment authorization document, that and is able to work, she can start contributing to those quarters. So if you're both working full time, each of you're getting when you get a 1 quarter, it's doubled as 2 quarters. But you have to earn 40 quarters, and you have to be liable for them. And if you get divorced, you still have to, under state law, pretty much all the states, if there is alimony ordered by the court in states that allow alimony, then you are responsible to pay for her to support her at that level. The It was raised that some of the states do not have alimony. Okay, and so you can't get alimony in those states. However, you're still not out of the woods, because even if you don't get ordered alimony to support her at this level, all she has to do is petition the government, the federal government, to order that the sponsor take care of her. All she has to do basically is apply for some government funded benefit.
Okay.
And then the government itself then will sue you for under the sponsorship. So anyway, so person on Social Security, if you're making $1,700 a month, that's not enough, because I think this comes out, if you divide that by 12, it looks like it's about, I don't know, $1,795 or something. It's just under the $1,800. If you make that, you can be a sponsor. If you don't make that, then you can't be a sponsor. But if you can't be a sponsor, you can get a joint sponsor. So a lot of cases, people have a friend, an employer that they're close to, a child, an adult child that wants to help sponsor it, parents that want to help sponsor. All you need is another sponsor to kick you over and above this this guideline, and then you can bring. So being on Social Security is not a bar, and some people, like especially on Social Security disability, can. And all you have to do is have a job where you can make enough to go over that. Right. So there's lots of things that people can do.
So a couple things on that. So I suppose then that is something to factor in if you're going to date or marry a single mom with perhaps 2 kids. Then all of a sudden you need to be looking at that too. And,
that is true.
Now, what if you were to get I guess 2 follow-up questions. What if you were to get a divorce to your wife who's got 2 kids? Now, would the amount you're responsible for 10 years be with 2 dependents? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
No, correct. Now you're signing the contract for that.
Right. Divorce rate in the USA with big age differences, why and how to avoid. And then we also have divorce rate for age gap and how to avoid. So both kind of tied together. A couple of questions we had in the comments.
All right. I have a big age difference between Jally and me. Okay. She's okay. I'm not supposed to tell you. Okay. I can't tell.
You can just say it was a big age difference. That's fine.
There's a big age difference. Yes. Let's just say she's over 30. So, so that there's a big age difference. And here in the United States, Western women generally do not like big age differences. Now there are exceptions, but that's exception, not the rule. The thing is, when there's a big age difference, the most common, what I see, now I practice divorce family law as well. And what I see in big age differences is first of all, I rarely get a big age difference divorce. the age difference if you I've seen the statistics. You get the big age difference in divorces a lot when you're in the big cities in the United States. And you take a look at the culture of big cities versus the culture of smaller cities. We
Mhm.
have a lot of different cultures here in the United States. People more rural areas or smaller cities are much more family oriented and much have a much deeper sense of faith in religion. Um, Overall, people that are in religion have the same divorce rate as secular. Uh,
Mhm.
that's that's it, because it's just a believe right, behave right, instead of a focus on a relationship with God. People that have a deep faith in God have a tendency to have a deep faith in the family, and so even with an age difference, that makes a factor. That makes a big difference. But there's a couple obvious glaring facts that I can see in
Mhm.
divorces with a big age difference, and that is where the older person, which is generally, your audience is going to be the man,
Mhm.
where he has a young Filipina, um, that here in the United States, whether they bring her here, probably over there, it may work just fine. But here, if you are controlling,
Mhm.
then that big age difference is going to make it more likely that she's going to be attracted to somebody else. If you're controlling or abusive, if you say it's my way or the highway, what you're doing is you are not building a deep relationship. If you treat her like your daughter
Mhm.
and not like your wife, and there's a lot of subtleties involved with that. If you treat her as like a daughter and you're like a parent, it's going to weaken the relationship. It's going to make it more into the superficial range, and she's going to want to become more likely to be westernized or attracted to somebody else. However, if you treat her as an equal, even though you've got all this experience,
Mhm.
I know, even though I've had all this experience, sometimes she has to learn the hard way. So even though I have all the experience, I don't say no. Um, I may try to reason with her, but I don't say no, and she tries it and she learns. They have to be able to learn lessons that you learned the hard way. They need to learn the lessons the hard way too. And in those cases where I see age gap falling apart, it's one, selfishness, controlling, or treating her like she's your daughter and you're a parent. If you can avoid those three things, Filipinos are the most loyal women in the entire planet, I believe.
That's very, very sound advice. And we're on the very last one. If you have just a couple more minutes, you have a couple more minutes?
Absolutely. For you,
Oh,
Gio, your audience, great.
appreciate it, Ken.
I'll
So,
just I'll just send you the bill, and it can be $13 million in pesos.
I'd still have a heart attack with 13 million. The last one is common mistakes and when you absolutely need a lawyer. I think we're talking about maybe when you're trying to do the paperwork and stuff yourself, maybe.
Okay, common mistakes when you really need a lawyer. Well, the first one is if you, the USC, the U.S. citizen, if you have a criminal history, if you have, especially if you have a violent crime history or a history of drug charges. Okay, what has to be done is you have to be what I call rehabilitated, not rehabilitated from getting off of drugs. Hopefully, you've already done that, but your reputation is. Now, remember, the USCIS and the State Department, they presume that you're committing immigration fraud. That means they presume that your history is still your character. So if you're 75 years old and you got caught on a trafficking charge when you were 21,
Mhm.
okay, that still follows you, and you're still presumed to be ineligible sponsor or to petition the government for any kind of immigration petition. So you petitioning for a relative is still petitioning the government. So you really need a lawyer to do that, because I've had a number of them, and
Hmm.
there are things that you can do to rehabilitate. It's on a case by case basis. You can do things that prove that your character is completely different than what you were back then, but you have to prove it to their satisfaction. Okay.
Okay.
The second thing, and this is a big one, if you have any kind of charge of domestic violence, or you
Hmm.
had an order of protection, you don't even have to be convicted, and the order of protection can even have been dismissed. But if you have if you have any sign of domestic violence, you need in your history, in your past, you have to you need a lawyer. Now, one of the things that both the United States and the Philippines are big on is all the women, trying to prevent all these women from the Philippines coming to the United States, because an awfully high percentage. I'm not saying more than half. I don't know what the percentage is, but
Hmm.
a substantial percentage of Western men, whether it's Australian, European, or American or Canadian, are controlling and abusive. Okay, and so if you have that on your record, that's going to be a major issue. But the other corollary part of that is, if you have that on your record, the women, when they are getting their fiance visa approved, they go to the consulate in Manila and go to the interview. They're going to be questioned about it there if it's on the record,
Hmm.
and making sure they're aware of it. And then before they come, they have to go to a class. I think it was about 2 hours long, the class before you could come, Jally.
I forgot
Where they talked about domestic violence.
Right.
It was about 2 hours long or 4 hours long.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry, I forgot about it. It was been
Okay, she's
4 years
forgotten.
ago.
It's been a few years since she went through it. But there is this class they have to attend, or
Hmm.
otherwise they get the release that is required to leave the country for their country. And there they go over the problems of domestic violence in Western country, and they are given information about what resources are available, and
Okay.
not only from the Philippine embassy and all the consulates, but also from the United States government. They're also told about the VAWA petitions that we have here, which is Violence Against Women Act, where they can, if they cooperate with the government in getting them prosecuted, or they have evidence that they have been a victim of domestic violence, they can get a green card just from that.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
Oh,
the men need to go see a lawyer in order, if they have a domestic violence on their record. The third is one that's an absolute bar. Uh, and this is under what's called the Adam Walsh Act. These are crimes, specific crimes against children. So
Okay.
it's crimes involving kidnapping, false imprisonment, engaging in a sexual conduct, using in a sexual performance, solicitation to practice prostitution, video voyeurism. So if you are found to have um, sexually explicit pictures of children on your computer, and you get caught with that, that would be a bar. Child
Okay.
pornography, sexual conduct involving the minor. So if you were 19 years old and you had a sexual relationship with a 14 years old, that would be a bar. And then last is, well, part of that is any conduct that is by nature a sex offense. Okay. Now, the only issue here that a lawyer could help you with is that a lot of times there are laws in states where part of it is involves a minor and is involves one of these offenses, but part of it is just simply contributing to the delinquency of a minor. But when you get charged with that violation, it comes under that Adam Walsh Act prohibition. So a lawyer might be able to look through. I'm thinking about one I had not too long ago, where I was able to show and demonstrate that what he actually did was under the first part of that criminal section, but not the second part, and then he got approved. But it took my intervention in order for him to make that work. And then the fourth one is just simply you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, and you can't figure out what it says. Now, the fiancé visa instructions and the petition for relative instructions, they can be confusing when you're not used to reading legal things. Now, there are some websites that are very helpful. Immigration Journey, Boundless something Immigration, I think it is. There are a number of sites that can help you. I know that the Catholic Church has a number of resources that you can ask questions of. You can find answers at someplace, something, sometimes you just Google the answer. You can find out what it means. But if you can't, or you don't feel comfortable, you don't want to take the risk of being rejected, then it may be worth it to you, if you have the funding available, to pay the $13 million to hire a lawyer. I'm just kidding. It's just it always feels like $13 million whenever you hire an attorney. So those are the things that areas where you really do need to have an attorney.
Sounds great. Well, Ken, thank you again for your time. And I guess for those watching, if you guys have questions for Ken, you can leave them down in the comments. I don't think you'll answer the comments, but maybe we'll have you back on the show in a few weeks, maybe.
If you're free.
Fantastic. Well, Ken, thank you.
You and gang.
Yeah, we will. We'll enjoy our new year. We're gonna head out to the province there and enjoy like 3 days there. So yeah, you guys. Yeah, thank you. And you guys enjoy your camping trip, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Take care and Happy New Year.
All right. Take care. Happy New Year.